Ready to go?
I think we're set to jet.
All right. So, thank you so much for joining me on Naturally Nova. My name's Natalie, and I'm here to share my origin story, how I became the bearded lady, and what I've gone through, how I'm going through healing myself. Might want to grab a box of tissues. There's a good chance you're going to need it. So I was born in April of 1987 in George Air Force Base, San Bernardino, California. My big, beautiful Mormon family had so much fun in my early years. We watched all of the Disney movies. I had unicorn posters all over my walls. It was absolutely fantastic. We played dress up all the time, listened to all the music like Neil Diamond, Beach Boys, The Carpenters, Harry Belafonte, all of these incredible artists, and just got to sing and dance and play, and everything was pretty peachy. Well, about the age of 7, that was when I realized that we had moved quite a few times, and it never really bothered me up until this point. So we were living in Hurricane, Utah at this point. I had lots of fun at this house and had several not so fun times at this house. Some of the more fun times were having a zip line in the backyard. That was an absolute blast. More on those stories later. I made my first real friend outside of the family that I grew very, very close to. Some of the less great things that happened at this time was finding my dog poisoned on the side of our house. That was the first real shock I'd ever had in my life. The next one was, at the same age, being shown my first adult film. Very, very adult film. As you can imagine, that would shock a person just a little bit. So we'll get into that on future videos. When I was 8, or around that time, that was when we made another move, and this one had the biggest, well, not the biggest, but a pretty big impact on me, because this was when I lost that very close friend that I knew I wasn't going to see again, and it was really hard. I got baptized at this point because in the Mormon church, we baptize at 8 years old, and they believe that this is the age where you are ready to make decisions and know right from wrong. So we moved again at 9 years old. I had several more fun things and several more not fun things happen. This was around the time that Wayne's World came out. And if you can picture this, 4 little kids sitting in the back of a Dodge Colt blasting Bohemian Rhapsody as loud as we could and singing at the top of our lungs. Every single one of us hitting a different note. It was absolutely fantastic. We also had the opportunity, my dad was in school at the time, and he was actually in a nursing program. One of the things he decided to do at this point was take me and several of my siblings, not several, except take me and a couple of my siblings to a nursing home. At 9 years old, I had never seen anybody in a state of disease. I walked into that place and saw the gamut of the huge range of dis-ease that was possible in this human existence. And my little 9-year-old brain went, what the fuck? I thought to myself, my immediate thought was, I am gonna learn everything I need to know to not wind up here. Because I was 9, and that's what you think when you're 9. So, after leaving that place and being, scared to my core, my dad ended up changing degrees and switched to finishing with a drafting degree. He taught me how to use AutoCAD, which has been an absolute blessing for me because I use it to make all of my stained glass patterns now. So that was one of the best things that happened when I was 9. One of the other really great things was I had a bishop at this age that was a dentist. My front teeth, my two front teeth, had grown in behind my bottom teeth. And I don't know if this dentist or I don't know if this bishop knew that I needed it or what prompted him to make the decision to donate a retainer to me to fix my smile. I will be forever grateful to that dentist because having a straight smile was one of the few things that got me through the next several years. So, I get my teeth straightened, and we moved again, a couple more times. That was when I was about 11 years old, and I realized that I had the first hair growing on my chin. And the first time I saw it, I looked in the mirror, leaned forward, and was like, what is that? Plucked it out, and was like, okay, we're good. It's gonna go away. It did not go away. In fact, over the next couple of years, it progressed to a full beard, full 5 o'clock shadow. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So at 11, I ended up reading this book called White Fang. And little spoiler alert, for anybody who hasn't read it, at one point, one of the characters is sitting by the fire and he's about to lose his life. And he's sitting in the firelight and flexing his hands back and forth and just marveling at this body that he has and I thought to myself at that point, yeah, I really need to know how our bodies work. I need to understand what's going on here. So one, I don't end up in the nursing home in any of those conditions because that was still very in my head. And now I had the facial hair to deal with. So, I really need to get this stuff figured out. At about 12, we ended up moving to Utah. And at this point, we had moved so many times, I was getting madder and madder and madder. So with this particular move, we went to Utah, and we were supposed to start a business with one of my uncles, one of my cousin's families. And I was told it was supposed to be our last move. So I settled in, got comfortable, made some friends, started playing the flute, was really excited, did my best because we could barely afford to get this used flute. So I practiced it every day and made sure that it was worth it for my parents to buy this flute for me. I also got to sign up for an art class, and it was my favorite. I was really, really excited because, I'd only been doing it for a month or two, but realized I think I could actually do this. Well, I was sitting in that art class one day when the door opened, and a student said, Natalie, you need to get your stuff and head to the front office. So I said, okay, packed everything up and went to the front office to find my parents telling me that we were moving again, and I never got to say goodbye. And this was the move that broke that little girl, because there had been so many moves at that point, and I had lost so many friends that I got to a point where, as we drove away from that school, I said, fuck it, I'm done. I'm not making friends anymore because I just lose them every time. And of course, at that point was when we came back to the Valley of the Sun and didn't move again. But of course, my little brain didn't know that we weren't going to move again. So while I knew people at church and was friendly and happy and bubbly on the outside, on the inside I was shattered. And I wouldn't let anybody close for many, many years. During this time, I had thought about some of the various medical professions that I could go into to figure out my condition, figure out how to take care of my body. I wasn't interested in being a doctor, at least in the Western area. I didn't want to be a nurse, and I definitely had no desire to be a surgeon. So I ended up on massage therapy. At 12 years old, I knew I was going to do massage therapy so that I could get a full comprehensive understanding of the musculoskeletal system, the lymphatic system, all of these areas that I would then be able to use that medical training to continue my education outside of the education system, because I really didn't plan on being in school for much time. That I wanted out. So trade school seemed like the best route to go. I also, around this time, had a guidance counselor from the high school come down to show us the electives, and one particular elective really caught my eye. I was still playing the flute at this point, but I couldn't get back into art. For me, it was too hard. But this class that was offered was stained glass, and I got really excited. So most of the time you're supposed to put 1, 2, 3 on the various areas so that they can put you in all of the classes determined by your preference. Well, when I saw that, I went 1, 2, 3, star, 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 and circled it 5 times because I didn't care what other classes I got into. I wanted that one. And I was very lucky because I got to do it for all 3 years of my I got to do it all 3 years of my high school time. By the time I hit 13, that was when my beard was the thickest and I had officially gotten up to 200 pounds. My weight shot up so quickly that I had stretch marks covering the backs of my knees, on my arms, my chest, all over my hips and stomach, well before having any kids. And I remember when they first came in, they were dark, dark purple. And I was pretty pale at the time. So when I stood in front of the mirror naked, I looked like a purple striped zebra. At least that's what I thought at the time. It was around this time that I had several things said to me. I was told I had a big forehead. I was told I had cankles. I had my happy trail that was growing pointed out to me. Hair that was growing on my chest pointed out to me. And when I was a kid, I remember being told the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And when I heard all of these things, I remember kind of sloughing it off and thinking to myself, oh, whatever. But these words had a way of sticking that I couldn't quite shake. And when I got home, I remember looking in the mirror and thinking to myself, is that all they see? They don't see anything else? They just see all of these flaws? And after about a week of looking in the mirror and seeing what other people saw, that was all I could see. So I stopped looking in the mirror. I cut bangs to cover my forehead. I stopped wearing shorts because I didn't want anybody to see my stretch marks and point them out or tell me I had cankles again. Over the next couple of years, I isolated even more. I only went to school and to church. At this point in my life, I was so uncomfortable in my own skin that I lost myself even more in music and movies because it was so much easier to imagine my life as one of these characters than as my own. I was so uncomfortable in my skin, I wanted nothing but to escape it. So not long after that, I realized that my body was capable of feeling more than pain, that I was in fact capable of feeling really good in my own skin, really good. And one of my family members found out and told my parents, and being the good Christian Mormon parents that they are, decided the best route was to take me to the bishop so that I could repent for this grievous sin that I had committed against myself. And it would have been one thing if I had been able to say to this bishop, yeah, I reached the big O. Sorry, won't do it again. But that wasn't enough. I had to describe what was used, where it was used, how often it was used, all to this man that I was not close to, that was 40 plus years my senior as a very young teen. And I want to say that whether you believe it to be a sin or not, something that you need to see a bishop for or not, being in that situation caused far more damage than anything I could have imagined doing to myself. There were ramifications from that interview for years that I didn't acknowledge until very recently. So, after that interview, I was even angrier with my parents. And when I left the interview, I never told them what was said in it. I just shut down even more, got even angrier. But I love my parents, and seeing how my mom was at church, seeing how people were around her, they all wanted her advice. They wanted to hear her sing. They wanted to just be around this woman who was so loving and giving and caring. And I remember looking at her one day and thinking to myself, I want to be just like my mom. I was very lucky that I got to sing in church with her a few times. It was one of the memories that I treasure. Through the next couple of years, through my self-isolation, I ended up spending quite a bit of time bonding with my mom. She taught me several crafts, from crocheting to Brazilian embroidery, all kinds of fun little crafts that I got to teach my own kids. And we grew very, very close, reading books back and forth and just sharing a lot of time watching movies and having a lot of good fun. My dad actually, at this point in time, had the opportunity to play Jesus Christ in the temple's presentation of the Easter pageant for several years running. He actually grew his hair out and beard and looked very much the part. And I can honestly tell you, having Jesus walk around your house for several years is both really awesome and super weird. So that was a fun experience. When I was 16, I got to also experience what it was like to go on a pioneer trek, pushing the handcart and everything, bonnet and all. It was not my favorite experience. We'll get into that on another video. At this point, I decided it was time for a change. I didn't want to be 200 pounds anymore. I didn't want to self-isolate anymore. I wanted to make friends and figure my stuff out. So at 16, it's time for change. I was in stained glass at this point and having an absolute ball getting into the glass. I should mention, at one point I actually came across, or was flipping through my Bible and saw that it said King James Version. And I remember asking my mom at this point, well, if there's a King James Version, are there other versions? And her response was, well, yes, there's other versions, but this is the one that we believe to be the most accurate. And I remember pausing and thinking, most accurate, but not 100% accurate. So what was changed? Who changed it? When was it changed? Why was it changed? I had questions. But I was told this is the one we're supposed to read. It's the one we're supposed to take as truth and, read it with a grain of salt, even though it was taught to me as word for word fact. I had a hard time with that. I definitely did not agree with that. There was another point with the church that, and God's plan that I was taught that I definitely disagreed with as well. We'll get into that on future videos. But at this point, I had basically decided the Mormon church was not for me. I had been taught many incredible things on how to treat other people well, how to, not hurt the people next to me. I did the best I could. I definitely did the best I could, but we're all human and make mistakes too. So it was around this time that I was, 200 pounds, had the full beard, when a movie called Hot Chick came out with Rob Schneider. And if any of you have seen this movie, you'll understand where I'm going with this. If you have not, spoiler alert, the two main characters in this movie end up swapping souls from body to body, and it's a man and a woman swapping bodies. So this woman is stuck in this man's body, and he is not hairless, shall we say. He's got a decent amount of hair on his person. And every morning she's having to deal with this hair and all of this stuff. And at one point they go to the character in the story that was the nerd, the fat girl, that, all the hot girls had been picking on throughout the movie. And when they went to her, Rob Schneider's character, who was, embodying this female's soul, says to the character, "You have no idea how hard it is to wake up every day with hair all over your face and have to shave it and deal with it." And they pan over to this character and she goes, "Yes, I do." And I was sitting on the couch at 16 years old as that 200-pound chick with the beard, the real beard, and laughing and crying at the same time because I was like, no, I really do. But I didn't know how to fix it at that point, so all I could do was laugh and cry about it. So at, halfway through my sophomore year of high school, I decided it was time to join aerobics, and that was when I met Coach Court. She changed my life. She showed me what just moving my body could do for me. By the end of my junior year, I had lost over 65 pounds. I'd gone from a size 22 down to an 8, and for the first time in many, many years, finally started having a little bit of self-confidence. At this point, I couldn't progress any farther with my flute in band, so I decided to drop out of that and hop over to choir because I had grown up singing my whole life, so it was a fairly natural shift for me, and I wanted to see what it would be like to be in choir. And I was very, very lucky because my senior year I got to be in the top 2 choirs and had so many incredible experiences. So we'll share those in future videos. But also around 17, in my junior year, I had my first car accident. A cell phone was involved. We'll get into that in another video. My senior year rolls around and I was so excited because I got to sell my very first stained glass piece. I ditched seminary basically the entire year because I was done with church at that point and decided that Bible study was not for me anymore. So I would go in and do stained glass every time I was supposed to be in my seminary class. Thank you, Mr. Walker, that was awesome. Also around this time, I got to start working at my first job at AMC Theaters. And this was where I got my first kiss by Adam. Thank you very much, because that was one of the highlights of that time. I had been extremely depressed for a very long time, so getting that first kiss was pretty awesome. But I ended up hanging out with Adam and one of his buddies at his house and was invited to go upstairs to check out this video that his older brother had found. And this was when I was shown my second involuntary adult film. This one was rather shocking for me because it had a female doing what I had, had to go and repent for. And there was a situation similar to a geyser going off. And, at the moment watching this video, I remember sitting there like this and just being like, But in my head, I was going, oh my God, what? That's not, a body is not capable of doing that, you know? So at this point, I was not ready to hop in the sack, we'll say. Another year goes by and I'm graduating high school. I have lost my virginity at this point, but we're going to share that in another video because it's complicated. So I have my second car accident, and this one involved being really tired. Again, we'll share this one in another video. I also lost both of my grandparents on my mom's side around this time. They were people I was very, very close to, my grandpa especially, and his passing had a profound effect on me. I kind of went numb at that point because I had been so angry for so long, so ashamed, so frustrated for so long that I just blocked everything out, because if I didn't feel, then I didn't have to deal. 2 weeks after I got out of high school, I started massage therapy school at Apollo College and absolutely loved it. I learned so much about the body, how it works. Several things were left out that I wish I had been taught, but you know, I got a very good comprehensive understanding of all of the major systems in the body. And while I was in school, I got married to my ex-husband, John. Flash forward to where this is going. The only week that I missed during school was when we went over the throat. Every other week I was there every day, and I absolutely absorbed everything that I possibly could throughout. So when I graduated, I thought to myself, all right, here I am fit, I've got all this knowledge, I'm gonna go out and figure out the rest and heal myself, and then I'm gonna heal the world. Obviously, it took a little bit of a turn. 3 months after graduating from massage therapy, I had just started working for Massage Envy when I was in my third car accident. This one, I was hit by a tree. Yes, I was hit by a tree. I was driving home, monsoon season, and it was super dark, rainy, absolutely insane out. I went to get off the freeway at Mesa Drive, and one of the trees lining the side of the freeway fell over in front of my car, and I launched my Ford Focus up over this tree. So it hit me. I was attacked. And when I landed after jumping this tree, I had all this adrenaline going through me, did the whole swerve back and forth, brought it to under control, finished driving home, and didn't think a whole lot of it. About 2 weeks later, I went to stand up off my couch and felt my whole back seize. It tightened like I had never felt in my life at that point. I couldn't move for at least 20 minutes. I was in so much pain, it felt just like a hot glove had engulfed my whole back and was shooting down my right leg. For about 20 minutes it stayed like that, and then I was finally able to relax enough to sit. Well, I didn't have insurance at the time because as a young 19-year-old, I didn't know the difference between car insurance and health insurance. And when I found out that my car was covered, but I was not, and that I did not have health insurance, and I had absolutely no way to go and get x-rays or find out what was going on, the only thing I could do was deal with the pain. So, you know, here I am with all this knowledge on how to fix everybody around me. One of the things that I was taught was we had to be able to observe people walking around, and just by observing them, be able to tell where they were tight, where they needed stretching, where they needed work done. I wasn't taught how to take care of myself. That was not part of the curriculum. So I did the best I could for the next couple of years, trying to let the pain ease, trying to figure out what I was going to do for work, because I certainly couldn't stand over a table and perform massages on a regular basis. One of the things that I learned when I was in my clinicals before having my car accident was when I was doing my clinicals, you have to work so many hours doing whatever your trade is before you're allowed to actually enter the workforce. So I had an opportunity to go to a fancy pool party in Scottsdale for a very incredible family. And several of us were setting up our tables, getting the massage tables ready to go, all dressed. And these two little kids came running in from outside. And, you know, being Mormon, I was around a lot of kids growing up, like a lot. And I can tell you, looking at these two little kids, they were the most vibrant, healthy, just beautiful little children I had ever seen. And I kind of sidled over to the mom and was like, so what are you doing? Because you're clearly doing something different. These kids are incredible. What are you doing? And she said, well, you know, we really don't have a lot of sugar in the house. We eat a lot of vegetables. You know, that's basically what we snack on. And I remember pausing and thinking to myself, well, damn, because that was not in my wheelhouse at all at that point in my life. So that was my first clue that I needed to change my diet a little bit. But I'm stubborn, and I didn't for several more years. So I go through my car accident. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life and kind of hopping from one job to the next. And of course, because I couldn't move and couldn't exercise, started putting the weight right back on and shot all the way back up to 185 pounds. And because old habits die hard, found it very easy to watch lots of movies with my ex, because that's what we love to do together. We watched movies, played video games, and I even got to go to the world premiere of X-Men Wolverine when it was here in the Valley. That was awesome. But I didn't really talk to him a whole lot about anything real deep. I didn't talk about my childhood or any of the things that I had gone through. I just was happy and put on a smile and coasted for a couple of years. And of course, that doesn't work out very long. Around the 3-year marriage mark, few weeks before our 3rd anniversary, I had noticed a change in his behavior. He wasn't, you know, we never fought. We always got along. We were really good friends. We'd never had any kind of argument. And all of a sudden, he was very distant. Wouldn't hardly look at me, wouldn't talk to me, nothing. So after a week or two of this, I finally cornered him in the hall and was like, dude, what's up? Like, do you not love me anymore? Kind of jokingly. And he just stopped and turned and made eye contact with me and didn't say anything. And a minute or two went by before I finally realized he wasn't going to say anything and that I had just hit the nail right on the head. And I was baffled. I was like, are you serious? And walked past him, went and sat on my bed. And at this point, we talked for a few hours and I couldn't get a whole lot out of him as to what had changed, what was wrong. All I got was, I love you, just not that way anymore. And I remember at the time thinking, how? How do you go from loving someone like that to not loving them anymore? And at that point, I felt like this black hole had opened in my chest and just spread. Because I didn't want to go through a divorce. I was not... Everything I had been taught growing up was how to be a good wife, how to be loving and caring. So I spent the next 3 months doing everything that I could to try to make it work. We talked, I spent, in the beginning, it went from one night a week to up to a week at a time at my mom's house to give him space to think and process whatever he felt he needed to process. And at this point, I had found a company called Green Tea HP. And this company, I was really excited to work for because looking at their website, understanding the process, I knew that you got lots of the antioxidant from the green tea without a lot of the caffeine and other things. So I was really excited to start working for this company and see what kind of benefits I could get from it. At this point, I'm at work one day and I got a text from him that said, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending. I think we should separate for now. And I had told him in our very first conversation about how things had changed that if we separated, it was permanent. I was not one for separating and getting back together over and over. My opinion was you either work it out together or you don't. So when I got this text, I was a little upset. I ended up calling my boss, sobbing, telling her, I'm pretty sure my marriage is over. I don't know what to do. She said, shut down the kiosk, go home. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Just call me when you can get back to work and everything's okay. So I said, all right. And I drove away from the mall to my mom's house, and the whole drive home just sobbed and thought to myself, I'm done. I'm done. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep putting in the effort for someone who's not giving anything back. And I got to my mom's house and went inside only to realize that we were having a large, extended family get together and had all of my cousins and aunts and uncles and everybody over. And here I come walking in the door, total wreck, walk past everybody and slam the door to total silence. So my mom came in, she asked, what was going on, and I told her about the text and that I was done, that I couldn't do it anymore. She asked what I wanted to do, and I said, I want to move out. She said, when? And I said, now. So luckily I had several cousins with me, so we went over to the apartment that we were sharing, and I packed up my stuff and moved out while he was still at work. Probably not the most mature move, but I wasn't in a great place. So we'll dive into that further in future videos. But when I moved out, I got absolutely nothing from him for weeks. I got one text that night that said, well, I didn't want you to move out. And my response was, you asked for a separation, you got it. So after a few weeks of not hearing from him, I decided that it was going to be a divorce, that I wasn't going to waste my life pining for someone who clearly wasn't pining for me. So at this point, I'm working for Green Tea and absolutely loving it. I went through my divorce with John, and while I was drinking this green tea, lost 30 pounds just from adding this drink. And I remember, hitting that mark and thinking, well, damn, if this one drink can do this for me, what's all the food that I'm eating doing for me? So I decided it was time to start looking into the digestive system and microbiome and, what foods were affecting what areas of the body. This is when I came across things like traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and found out about all these different herbs and plants and how they affect the body, phytoestrogens and enzymes and proteins and all of these different things that were in these plants that made them just absolutely amazing for you. And I had one of my cousins come over and was explaining some of these things to her, basically verbally vomiting all over her all of the information that I had just gained. And at one point she paused and said, Natalie, I think we need a safe word. Because that was a lot of really good information, but my brain kind of wants to blow right now, and I want to scream like banana, pineapple, something, because I can't take any more. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So I have, verbal safe words now for when I say too much, but hopefully we won't have to use them too many times on this channel. As I was diving into each of these rabbit holes, learning about microbiome, the digestive tract, all of the foods and how they were grown, I remembered back in school being taught that our food didn't have the same mineral content that it had in previous generations. So I started looking into that, down another rabbit hole. Decided that I was going to do the best that I possibly could while trying to grow my own food. Let me tell you, living here in the Valley of the Sun, it is not easy to grow your own food, especially when you live with a backyard as small as mine, and it's a nice little brick wall that basically turns into a giant brick oven every summer. So I'm figuring out the year-round thing, but I at least have a nice spring, fall, and winter garden. So I'll be sharing lots of gardening in the future and how I'm figuring out how to do it here in the Valley, because that's what I need to learn. In my searching for health, I definitely needed to find doctors that had studied all of these things. I wanted to have sources that I could trust. So I found a conference called The Real Truth About Health that started a little over a decade ago. And in this conference, they had a huge panel of doctors from around the globe, specialists in things like aluminum and GMOs, cancer, raw foods, nutritionists, all of these experts. And I thought, awesome, I have this one great source I could go to for all of this phenomenal information. So started downloading lots of books and listening to audiobooks from these various doctors and implementing a lot of the things that I had learned from these incredible people. That was when the hair finally started to heal. At this point in my life, I really didn't think I could have kids. I had never had a period that was natural. They had all been, I'd had maybe 5 at that point in my life, and each one was caused by birth control, which I wasn't really about. I didn't want to have to take pharmaceuticals in order to heal my body or make it function. So, making all of these changes, we found out that we were pregnant, and I definitely cried because I was shocked. I really didn't think I was going to be able to, so that was kind of a little miracle for me. So after having my baby, I went back to work full-time and was the full-time mom, full-time worker, and tried to do my best to fit in fruits and vegetables where I could. I had seen a naturopath at this point and been diagnosed with PCOS. And of course, I was one of the lucky few that get to express the facial hair with this diagnosis, because not all of them do. But with this diagnosis, I at least began to understand where the imbalances were in my body. I had the blood work done to understand my insulin and how the glucose was affecting me and all of that. So I decided it was time to start adding things like fermented foods and phytoestrogen foods because I needed to balance out these estrogens in my body. And this was when I found intermittent fasting and understood how intermittent fasting worked. So I decided to start implementing that. And no, that doesn't mean starving myself. It's intentional induction of autophagy and apoptosis. Look it up. So in using all of these different techniques and beginning the weight loss or getting the weight off again, finally got back down to a weight that I was comfortable in. But at this point, my weight had fluctuated so much that I actually had 4 sets of outfits. I had a fat hairy outfit, a fat not hairy outfit for when I plucked or shaved, and a skinny hairy outfit and a skinny not hairy outfit set because I went all over the place. So basically every day when I woke up, I would look in the mirror and see what I had to hide that day so that I didn't get any more comments or be asked things like, what, did you get a sex change? That was fun. So I caked my face in makeup and had for well over a decade at this point. I very, very rarely left the house without it. And at this point, my husband, Chris, asked me one day, why do you wear so much? You really don't need to. It's not necessary. And I remember going outside without makeup for the first time in well over a decade. And knowing I was going to the store, I was going to several places, and I felt completely naked. I was fully clothed, but people were about to see the worst part of me, or what I saw as the worst part of me. And I didn't want any more comments. And when I walked outside and felt the sun on my face, It felt so good that I stopped and thought to myself, until I'm comfortable in my own skin, who the hell else is going to be comfortable with me in my skin? And I decided at that moment that I was not going to be ashamed of the hair that was on my face, because this was my story, this was my situation, and there wasn't much I could do other than live every day and do my best. So I ended up practicing a little bit of immersion slash what's it called? One sec. So I decided that I was going to practice a little bit of immersion therapy and exposure therapy before I really understood what either of those was. I decided that I wasn't going to wear makeup anymore, full boycott, that I was going to grow my bangs out and pull my hair away from my face every day so that I could see myself every day and be as non-judgmental as possible. To just see myself, see my skin, see my eyes, see that I wasn't as troll-like as I thought I was. At this point, we decided to take a trip to the sand dunes and ride quads and have a good time, which we'd done several times at this point. One of my favorite places to go is Glamis. It's an absolute blast, obviously. So on our ride over there, we stopped for food about an hour outside of camp. And on the ride from that stop to camp, my back started to tighten up again, to the point that when we hit the sand, I couldn't walk. It was so tight. I couldn't sit. I couldn't change clothes. And we had been looking forward to this trip for a long time, so I wasn't about to be the one to say, let's go home. In fact, I vehemently argued that we stay so that our child could play, so that he could go on some rides, because he'd been looking forward to this trip, and I'd been fine when we left the house. So I spent 4 days laying in the sand in a lot of pain. A lot of pain. With my husband running back and forth between entertaining me, taking care of my child and our child, and trying to get in some fun as well. And by the time we left to go home from that trip, I decided it was time to go get some x-rays done and figure out what exactly was going on with my body and why I was in so much pain. When I got to this chiropractor's office and walked inside, I looked like a 100-year-old woman. I could barely walk. And he had me stand up in the booth to take the picture. And, you know, here's the wall for the booth. He's on the computer on the other side. So he took the picture, and I stepped around to look at the computer screen. And he had a picture up that had the spine that had the curve in it. And I remember thinking to myself, well, whose picture is that? Isn't this kind of a HIPAA violation? He's not supposed to have other people's stuff up. So I leaned forward and said, well, whose picture is that? And he said, it's yours. And I went, what? I had no idea how much damage had been caused by the 3 accidents I'd been in and having not actually addressed any of them. So when I saw this decided curve in my spine and the rotation in my neck, the column, I had two or three vertebrae in my neck that had rotated quite significantly to the right. And I'm looking over all of these things and thinking to myself, well, of course you're in pain. This makes a lot more sense. So after getting a couple of massage therapy sessions done, the therapist that worked on me reminded me of a couple of different pressure points that I had learned when I was in school. So I went home, pulled out all my books from school, and decided it was time to go back over it and start really applying what I could from school to myself. So over the next year or two, I did as much trigger point and stretching and relaxing as possible, and added exercises that would help in straightening my spine. At this point, I ended up having an ectopic pregnancy, and we'll save that whole story for another time, but anybody who has had a miscarriage knows the pain and how difficult something like that is to go through. So after going through this ectopic pregnancy and having surgery and almost dying, I had to recover yet again, go through all the pain of healing, only to get pregnant yet again. And this one I knew was my last because my pregnancies and births had been very hard. I was very sick through my entire pregnancy. I had a very hard time keeping food down. And morning sickness is a joke. It's all day sickness. At least it was for me. So after having my second child, we were done, decided no more babies, and it was time to just focus on health, getting all of the hormones under control, and trying to keep my kids from ever having to deal with the things that I had had to deal with. So over the last couple of years, the progress has been quite significant. I've seen a huge reduction in the hair on my face to the point that it doesn't even grow really on my side of my face. There's maybe one or two here and there. And what grows on my chin is a fraction of what used to grow. It's kind of regressing in the same way that it progressed. But I am healing. I am finally letting go of all of these pains, all of these angers, seeing them differently. All of these struggles and things that I went through in my life. I was so angry for so long and got to the point where I was all but atheist. And this year changed that. I'd had a couple of experiences over the last several years that made me wonder if there was more than just this physical, than what we can see. And I came across a channel on YouTube called Next Level Soul. And one of the interviews that was done on this channel was a woman named Kaya Ra. And her story really had my attention, for one. The second thing that had my attention was a book she wrote, and the characters that were, or the book she wrote and the people that are in it definitely had my attention. But my own personal connection that came up in her talk really had my attention. So I decided I need to get this book. After or while reading this book, I ended up having some quite profound experiences and decided I needed to go back down the rabbit hole one more time. At this point, it's kind of looking a bit like Darren Kuyu, and if you haven't looked that up yet, you need to, because wow. But that's my rabbit hole right now. And going back into the rabbit hole, but this time for spirituality and understanding more than what I had been taught as a young Christian Mormon. And after reading all of these books and having the experiences that I had, I realized several years ago, I had told myself that if I ever figured out how to get this hair to stop expressing on my face and heal myself, that I needed to share my story. I didn't know how I was going to share it at the time. YouTube wasn't really a thing when I had this thought. But I knew I needed to share my story, and after the experiences that I had this year, I decided that it was time, because I thought about the 16-year-old me sitting on the couch at 200 pounds with this full beard, having absolutely no idea how she was going to heal herself. And I thought, there are so many women dealing with this issue. At the very least, I can share my tale. I can share how I went about healing. Everybody's different. We all have our own journey to go through, and I'm no extremist in any way. But I made changes, and I'm healing because of those changes. So I want to share my story. I want to share art and music and some of the tech that I've recently started using, talk about some of the books that helped me along the way, and eventually get to interview some of the people that made the most impact on me. Share their tales and how they got to where they are, because I feel that we all have a story to tell. And the more that we hear and the more that we listen, the better we understand and the less we judge each other. So, thank you. Thank you so much for watching my video and listening to my tale. The last thing I want to share is a couple years ago, this movie came out that had a pretty big impact on me. It was called The Greatest Showman. And in this movie is a character played by a woman named Keela Settle And this character happened to be the bearded lady. And when I watched her in this movie and the confidence that she portrayed and the strength that she had owning this character, I thought, I can do this. I can share my story and make a difference too. I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Hide away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen. I make no apologies. This is me.